The morning sun cast long shadows across the New Eden Colony marketplace. Jake Martinez stood at his usual spot near the central plaza, watching the daily trade activities with careful eyes. As the colony's defense coordinator, he made it his business to know everything that happened in their small settlement on the edge of known space. Today was different. The Vorthan trade delegation had arrived 3 days ago, and their presence made everyone nervous. The tall, scaled aliens moved through the market with an air of superiority that rubbed most humans the wrong way. Their leader, a creature called Zethkar, stood nearly 8 feet tall with dark green scales and piercing yellow eyes that seemed to judge everything they saw. Dr. Lisa Chang walked past Jake's position, carrying her medical bag as she made her rounds. She nodded to him with a tired smile. The colony's only doctor had been working extra shifts lately, making sure everyone stayed healthy during the important trade negotiations. These talks could mean the difference between prosperity and struggle for their small community. Any problems? Today? Lisa asked, pausing beside Jake. Nothing yet, Jake replied, his eyes scanning the crowd. But something feels off about these Vorthans. They act like they own the place. Lisa followed his gaze to where Zethkar stood examining some local crafts. The alien's body language spoke of barely contained disdain. Maybe that's just their way. Different species. Different customs. Jake had served in Earth's military before. Coming to New Eden, he had learned to trust his instincts about potential threats. Right now, those instincts were screaming warnings he could not ignore. Across the plaza, 8-year-old Tommy Bennett chased his pet through the crowded stalls. The small creature, something like a cross between a cat and a ferret, darted between people's legs with Tommy close behind. The boy's laughter filled the air as he pursued his escaped pet. "Sparky, come back!" Tommy called out, his small legs pumping as he ran. Pete Bennett, Tommy's father, worked at one of the mining stations outside the colony. He was a quiet man who loved his son more than anything in the universe. Right now he was haggling with a merchant over some tools, unaware that his boy was racing through the market. Captain Amy Rodriguez, the Earth Defense Force liaison, stood near the main trade booth discussing shipping schedules with colony officials. She wore her uniform with pride, representing Earth's interests in this remote corner of space. The trade agreements being negotiated today would affect dozens of human colonies. Sparky the pet bounded between the stalls, weaving through the legs of shoppers and traders. Tommy followed, focused only on catching his beloved companion. Neither the boy nor the pet paid attention to the large alien examining goods at a nearby stall. Zethkar held a piece of human artwork in his clawed hands, turning it over with obvious displeasure. To his species, the Vorthans, strength and dominance meant everything. These humans seemed weak and soft, unworthy of the respect they demanded in trade negotiations. The Vorthan had been testing human responses all week. Small insults, minor rudeness, subtle threats, the humans always responded. With diplomacy and patience. In Zethkar's culture, this marked them as inferior beings who deserved to be dominated. Tommy rounded a corner at full speed, his eyes fixed on Sparky, who had stopped to investigate something interesting near the alien's feet. The boy did not see the towering Vorthon until it was too late. The collision was gentle. Tommy's small body bumped into Zethkar's leg with barely enough force to make the alien sway. Under normal circumstances, it would have been nothing more than a minor accident, the kind that happened in busy marketplaces every day. But Zethkar saw it differently. The alien's yellow eyes blazed with sudden fury. In Vorthon society, any physical contact without permission was a grave insult. From a child of an inferior species, it was unthinkable disrespect that demanded immediate punishment. "You dare touch me, human whelp?" Zethkar's voice boomed across the marketplace. Tommy looked up at the towering alien with wide, confused eyes. At 8 years old, he did not understand the concept of interspecies politics or cultural differences. He only knew he had accidentally bumped into someone while chasing his pet. "I'm sorry, mister," Tommy said in his small voice. "I was just trying to catch Sparky." The apology meant nothing to Zethkar. If anything, it made him angrier. The child showed no proper fear, no recognition of his superior status. This was exactly the kind of disrespect that needed to be corrected immediately. Jake Martinez had been watching the interaction from across the plaza. He started moving the moment he saw the alien's aggressive posture, but he was too far away to prevent what happened next. Zethkar's clawed hand struck out faster than most humans could follow. The blow caught Tommy in the chest and sent the small boy flying backward into a nearby stall. The sound of the impact echoed across the suddenly silent marketplace. Tommy hit the ground hard and lay still. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. "That is how inferior species learn respect," Zethkar announced loudly, his voice carrying to every corner of the plaza. Dr. Lisa Chang dropped her medical bag and ran toward the fallen child. Her training kicked in immediately as she knelt beside Tommy's motionless form. His breathing was shallow and rapid, his skin pale and clammy. Internal injuries, definitely. Possibly life-threatening. Jake Martinez reached them seconds later, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. Around the plaza, other humans began to gather, their faces showing a mixture of shock, horror, and growing anger. "Nobody move," Jake said quietly, his voice carrying absolute authority. He had seen lynch mobs before and knew how quickly peaceful. People could turn violent when a child was hurt. Captain Rodriguez pushed through the crowd, her face grim. As the official Earth representative, this incident could destroy months of careful diplomatic work. But right now, politics seemed less important than the small boy lying unconscious on the ground. Pete Bennett heard the commotion and came running from his stall. When he saw his son lying motionless with Dr. Chang working over him, something broke inside the quiet mining engineer. "Tommy?" Pete's voice cracked as he knelt beside his boy. "He needs surgery immediately," Dr. Chang said, her hands already working to stabilize the child. "Internal bleeding, possible organ damage. Help me get him to the medical center." As they lifted Tommy onto an improvised stretcher, Zethkar watched with obvious satisfaction. The lesson had been delivered. These humans would now understand their proper place in the galactic order. The Vorthon delegation prepared to leave, citing diplomatic immunity and trade regulations. They had made their point about human weakness and inferiority. Now it was time to return home and report their success to the consortium. But as Tommy Bennett was carried away to fight for his life, none of the aliens noticed the look that passed between Jake Martinez and Captain Rodriguez. It was not the look of defeated beings accepting their inferior status. It was the look of parents realizing that someone had just made the worst mistake of their very long lives. The news traveled through human space faster than any starship could carry it. Within hours of Tommy Bennett's attack, every human colony, every Earth Defense Force vessel, and every diplomatic station had received the same message. An alien had struck a human child. A child who had done nothing wrong except chase his pet through a marketplace. Admiral Ben Parker stood in the command center of Earth's main military headquarters, staring at the holographic display showing Tommy's medical readings transmitted from New Eden Colony. The boy was alive, but barely. 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and trauma that would take months to heal. "Sir, we're receiving responses from every sector," reported his aide, a young officer whose own hands shook as she delivered updates. Colony Gamma 7 requests permission to mobilize their defense fleet. The mining stations at Kepler 186 are asking for immediate military support. Captain Williams from the Outer Rim Patrol says his crew is ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Parker had served in Earth's military for 30 years. He had seen wars, battles, and conflicts that claimed thousands of lives. But he had never seen a response like this. Across human space, people were reacting to Tommy's attack with a unity that transcended politics, distance, and personal differences. Dr. Nathan Cross entered the command center carrying a datapad filled with intelligence reports. As Earth's leading expert on alien psychology and military strategy, his analysis would shape humanity's response to this crisis. "Admiral, I've completed my preliminary assessment of the Vorthon military capabilities," Cross said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "They have 43 battle cruisers, 12 heavy destroyers, and approximately 200 support vessels spread across their territory." "Can we take them?" Parker asked bluntly. "In a straight fight? Probably. But that's not the real question. The real question is what message we want to send to the rest of the galaxy." Senator Claire Watson's voice cut through their conversation as she entered the room. Earth's representative to the Galactic Council had been in emergency session since the news broke, trying to find a diplomatic solution to the crisis. "The Galactic Council has officially dismissed our complaint," Watson announced, her face showing the strain of hours of failed negotiations. "According to their records, humans are classified as a Tier 3 developing species with limited legal protections. The Vorthon representative claims the attack was justified under their cultural laws regarding respect and proper behavior." The silence that followed Watson's announcement was deafening. Every person in the command center understood what those words really meant. In the eyes of the galactic community, Tommy Bennett's life had no value. His suffering meant nothing. The attack on a defenseless child was not just acceptable, it was legally protected. "There's more," Watson continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Vorthons are threatening economic sanctions against any human colony that pursues this matter further. They claim we should be grateful for the lesson in proper interspecies conduct." Admiral Parker felt something cold and deadly settle in his chest. In all his years of military service, he had never experienced anger like this. It was not the hot fury of battle or the quick rage of sudden conflict. This was something deeper, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "Get me a connection to every human commander in known space," Parker ordered. "Emergency priority, full encryption." Within minutes, holographic figures began appearing around the command center. Colony governors, ship captains, station commanders, and military leaders from across human territory materialized in the room. Some were still in their sleep clothes, having been awakened by the emergency call. Others wore work uniforms, stained with the honest labor of building humanity's future among the stars. Captain Amy Rodriguez appeared in the projection from New Eden Colony, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Admiral, I'm transmitting Dr. Chang's full medical report on Tommy Bennett. The boy is stable but critical. The damage was extensive and deliberate." "How extensive?" asked Governor Martinez from the Tau Ceti colony. 3 broken ribs, punctured. Lung internal bleeding in 2 organs, and severe bruising throughout his torso. Rodriguez replied. Dr. Chang says if the alien had struck just slightly higher, Tommy would have died instantly. The assembled commanders listened in grim silence as the medical details were shared. These were not people prone to emotional outbursts or hasty decisions. They were the leaders who had guided humanity's expansion into space, who had built colonies on hostile worlds and negotiated with alien species for decades. But they were also parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. They understood what Tommy Bennett represented. He was not just one child from one colony. He was every human child, everywhere. "What are our options?" asked Fleet Captain Johnson from the Outer Rim Patrol. Dr. Cross stepped forward, consulting his data pad. "I've been analyzing Vorthan behavior patterns and cultural practices. This attack was not random or emotional. It was calculated. They've been testing our responses for months, looking for signs of weakness or submission." "Testing how?" Senator Watson asked. "Small insults during trade negotiations, violations of agreed-upon protocols, subtle threats disguised as diplomatic language. Each time, we responded with patience and attempts at understanding. In their culture, this marks us as weak and suitable for domination. Admiral Parker absorbed this information with growing understanding. They think we're soft. They think attacking our children will make us back down and accept whatever treatment they decide to give us." "Exactly," Cross confirmed. "The attack on Tommy Bennett was intended as a demonstration, a message to all human colonies that we need to accept our place as an inferior species or face the consequences." The holographic assembly erupted in angry voices as commanders from across human space reacted to this revelation. For several minutes, the command center filled with furious demands for immediate military action, threats of total war, and promises of devastating retaliation. Admiral Parker let them vent their rage for a full 5 minutes before calling for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had made life-and-death decisions for decades. "I understand your anger. I share it. But we need to think carefully about our response. The galaxy is watching us right now. They expect us to either roll over and accept this treatment or to lash out like angry children and prove their point about human inferiority." "So what do you suggest?" asked Captain Williams, his own anger barely controlled. Parker looked around the room at the assembled leaders of human space. These people had built something remarkable among the stars. They had taken a species that had never left its home planet and spread it across dozens of worlds. They had done it through cooperation, determination, and an absolute refusal to abandon each other when times got difficult. "We're going to do something the galaxy has never seen before," Parker said quietly. "We're going to show them what happens when you threaten a human child. But we're going to do it our way, not theirs." Over the next several hours, plans began to take shape. Captain Rodriguez would remain at New Eden Colony to coordinate with Dr. Chang and monitor Tommy's recovery. Senator Watson would continue diplomatic efforts, not because anyone expected them to succeed, but because the galaxy needed to see that humans always tried peaceful solutions first. Dr. Cross would begin a comprehensive analysis of not just Vorthon military capabilities, but their entire society, culture, and psychology. If humanity was going to respond to this attack, they needed to understand their enemy completely. But the most important decision was made unanimously by every commander present. This response would not be driven by anger or desire for revenge. It would be driven by the absolute determination to ensure that no alien species ever again thought it was acceptable to harm a human child. As the emergency conference ended and the holographic figures faded away, Admiral Parker stood alone in the command center. Outside the windows, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its children among the stars were preparing for something that would change the galaxy forever. In a hospital bed on New Eden Colony, Tommy Bennett slept under the watchful care of Dr. Chang. The boy was healing, but slowly. His small body bore the marks of an alien's contempt for human life. The Vorthons had made their message clear. Now it was time for humanity to send a message of their own. 3 months had passed since Tommy Bennett was struck down in the New Eden marketplace. The boy was healing well under Dr. Chang's careful attention, but the scars ran deeper than his physical wounds. Every human in known space carried those scars now. Colonel Rick Stone stood in the briefing room of the EDF Normandy, studying holographic displays of Vorthan space. His special operations teams had been working around the clock, gathering intelligence on their target civilization. What they had discovered was both enlightening and disturbing. "The Vorthans have been planning this for over a year," Stone reported to the assembled officers. The attack on Tommy wasn't random. It was the final test in a carefully designed campaign to measure human responses to escalating aggression. Chief Engineer Maria Santos pulled up technical schematics on her display. Her teams had been retrofitting human vessels with new defensive systems, preparing for a conflict nobody wanted but everyone knew was coming. They've been monitoring our communications, tracking our ship movements, and analyzing our military capabilities, Santos added. Every trade negotiation, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange has been an intelligence-gathering operation. Captain Sam Johnson, head of Earth's intelligence network, activated a series of recorded conversations. His operatives had managed to infiltrate several Vorthon facilities, gathering evidence of their true intentions toward humanity. "Listen to this," Johnson said as alien voices filled the room, translated into clear English. "The humans respond to every insult with diplomacy," spoke a Vorthon military commander. "They show no pride, no strength, no willingness to defend their honor. They are perfect candidates for subjugation." "The child striking test will confirm their weakness," replied another voice, identified as Zethkar himself. "Once they accept this humiliation without meaningful response, we can begin the systematic reduction of their territories." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Tommy Bennett's attack had been planned as the first step in humanity's conquest. The Vorthons had studied human behavior and concluded that striking a child would either break human resistance completely or provoke an emotional, tactically poor response that would justify further aggression. Admiral Parker's voice came through the communication system from Earth headquarters. "Colonel Stone, what's the status on Operation Guardian Angel?" Stone consulted his reports. Operation Guardian Angel was humanity's coordinated response to the Vorthan threat. Unlike the aliens' expectations, it was not being planned in anger or haste. Every detail was being carefully considered, every possibility explored, every contingency prepared for. "Phase 1 is complete, sir. We have full intelligence on Vorthan military positions, command structure, and defensive capabilities. Phase 2 is proceeding ahead of schedule." Dr. Nathan Cross appeared on the holographic display from his research facility. His analysis of Vorthon psychology had revealed critical weaknesses in their thinking that could be exploited. The Vorthons suffer from a fatal flaw in their strategic planning, Cross explained. They assume that other species think like they do. They expect humans to respond with either immediate surrender or reckless aggression. They have no concept of patient, Coordinated, overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. This was the key insight that shaped humanity's response. The Vorthans expected humans to act like Vorthans, but humans had their own way of handling threats to their children. Chief Santos displayed the latest modifications to Earth's fleet. We've completed upgrades on 67 vessels. New shielding, technology, improved weapon systems, and enhanced coordination networks. But the real advantage is something the Vorthans will never see coming. Which is? Asked Colonel Stone. Every human in space is working together on this. Not just military personnel, but civilians, traders, miners, scientists, even children, old enough to help. We have a coordination network that spans every human settlement, and it's all focused on one goal. Captain Johnson pulled up intelligence reports from across Vorthan territory. Our infiltration teams have identified every major military installation, government facility, and command center in their space. We know their patrol schedules, their communication protocols, and their emergency response procedures. The scope of human intelligence gathering was staggering. In 3 months, humanity had penetrated deeper into Vorthan's security than any species had managed in decades of trying. But they had not done it through superior technology or advanced tactics. They had done it through sheer determination and the kind of cooperation that came naturally when human children were threatened. Pete Bennett appeared on the communication screen from New Eden Colony. Tommy's father had become something of a symbol for human resolve. His quiet dignity in the face of his son's attack had inspired people across human space. "How's Tommy doing?" Admiral Parker asked gently. "Better every day," Pete replied. "Dr. Chang says he'll make a full recovery, but he still has nightmares sometimes. He doesn't understand why the alien hurt him." The silence that followed Pete's words spoke volumes. Every adult in the briefing understood what Tommy could not. He had been hurt simply because he was human, and humans were considered inferior by the galactic community. "That's going to change," Colonel Stone said quietly. Dr. Cross activated another set of displays showing cultural analysis of various alien species. "I've been studying the broader galactic political situation. The Vorthans aren't the only species that views humans as inferior. At least 6 other major civilizations have been watching this incident to see how we respond." "You mean they're testing us too?" Santos asked. "In a way, yes. Our response to the Vorthan aggression will set the precedent for how other species treat humans in the future. If we allow this attack to go unanswered, every human colony becomes a potential target." This revelation added urgency to their preparations. Operation Guardian Angel was not just about responding to one species' aggression. It was about establishing humanity's place in the galactic community for generations to come. Captain Amy Rodriguez joined the conference from New Eden Colony, where she had been coordinating local preparations. "The colonists here want to help with the operation. They're not trained military, but they're determined to do something." "What did you tell them?" Parker asked. "I told them that protecting Tommy and all the other human children in the galaxy requires more than just military action. It requires showing the entire galaxy who we really are." Over the following weeks, the final preparations for Operation Guardian Angel continued. Human ships moved into position across known space, not in aggressive formations, but in carefully planned patterns that would demonstrate capability rather than threaten destruction. The Vorthan leadership, monitoring. Human activities interpreted these movements as signs of weakness and indecision. Their intelligence reports concluded that humans were too scattered and disorganized to mount any effective response. They had no idea that every human movement was part of a single, coordinated plan. They could not conceive of a species where parents on different worlds, who had never met each other, would work together seamlessly to protect all of their children. Tommy Bennett took his first steps outside the medical center, supported by Dr. Chang but walking on his own strength. His recovery had become a symbol of human resilience, watched by people across human space who saw in his healing their own determination to heal the wounds inflicted by Vorthan arrogance. The boy still did not fully understand what his accident had set into motion. He only knew that people were being extra kind to him, and that his father seemed sadder than before. But children heal faster than adults, in body and spirit, and Tommy was already making plans to teach Sparky not to run away in crowded places. As Operation Guardian Angel entered its final phase, humanity prepared to deliver a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The Vorthons had struck a human child, thinking it would demonstrate human weakness. Instead, they were about to discover what human strength really looked like when their children were threatened. 6 months after Tommy Bennett had been struck down in a marketplace on New Eden Colony, humanity's response finally began. It started not with weapons or threats, but with something the galaxy had never seen before: perfect coordination across an entire species. Fleet Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, watching as her task force dropped out of hyperspace exactly where they needed to be. Around her, holographic displays showed similar scenes playing out across Vorthan space. Every human vessel was arriving precisely on schedule, exactly where Operation Guardian Angel required them to be. "Admiral, all ships report ready status," announced her communications officer. "We have simultaneous positioning at all primary targets." Morrison nodded, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. What happened in the next few hours would determine humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. The Vorthons had expected either human surrender or a clumsy military response driven by emotion. They were about to discover their mistake. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner led the fighter squadrons that had been specially modified for this operation. His pilots had trained for months, not just in combat tactics, but in precision operations that would disable rather than destroy. Today's mission required surgical accuracy, not overwhelming firepower. "Phoenix Squadron, maintain formation," Turner commanded as his fighters approached the largest Vorthan military station. "Remember, we disable their ships, not their crews. We're here to make a point, not start a genocide." At the same moment, across Vorthan space, similar scenes were playing out. Human forces had appeared simultaneously at every major military installation, government facility, and strategic location in their territory. The coordination was flawless, the timing perfect, the message unmistakable. Dr. Helen Price, Earth's most skilled diplomatic specialist, stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. She had requested this meeting months ago, knowing that when Operation Guardian Angel began, the galaxy would need to understand humanity's motivations. "Honored representatives," Dr. Price began, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening across known space. "I come before you today not to declare war, but to present evidence of systematic aggression against human civilians. The holographic displays around the council chamber filled with documentation that Captain Johnson's intelligence teams had gathered. Communication intercepts, military planning documents, and recorded conversations that proved the Vorthans had planned their campaign of intimidation for over a year. The attack on 8-year-old Tommy Bennett was not an isolated incident of cultural misunderstanding, Price continued. It was a calculated test of human resolve, designed to measure our response to the deliberate harming of our children. Zeth-Kar himself sat among the Vortan delegation, his scaled features showing contempt for the human diplomat's words. He had expected this moment to showcase human weakness and desperation. Instead, he was watching something that made no sense to his warrior mindset. Back in Vorthan space, Admiral Morrison received confirmation that all human forces were in position. The operation had taken 6 months to plan and coordinate, but it was being executed in perfect synchronization across dozens of star systems. "Begin Phase 2, Morrison ordered. Lieutenant Commander Turner's fighters moved with precision that stunned the Vorthan defenders. Instead of attacking with overwhelming force, the human pilots targeted specific systems on each enemy vessel. Weapon arrays were disabled with surgical strikes, engines were rendered inoperable with minimal damage, and communication systems were jammed with techniques the Vorthans had never encountered. Within 30 minutes, the entire Vorthan military fleet was helpless, not destroyed, not slaughtered, but completely neutralized without a single casualty on either side. "Admiral Morrison to all Vorthan military commanders," the fleet admiral's voice broadcast across their disabled ships. "Your vessels have been disabled but not destroyed. Your crews are unharmed. This demonstration of human capability is complete." The message that accompanied the demonstration was more shocking than the military action itself. Humanity had not come for conquest or revenge. They had come to prove a point about capability and restraint that no species in galactic history had ever made. Dr. Price continued her presentation to the Galactic Council, displaying real-time footage of the operation. "As you can see, human forces have simultaneously neutralized every major Vorthan military asset. This was accomplished without casualties, without destruction of civilian infrastructure, and without any intention of occupation or conquest." The council chamber erupted in confused discussions. Representatives from dozens of species struggled to understand what they were witnessing. Military actions were supposed to be about dominance, conquest, or revenge. This was something entirely different. "The human forces could have destroyed every Vorthan installation," Price explained. "Instead, they chose to demonstrate that human patience should not be mistaken for human weakness. We do not start fights, but we will always finish them." Zeth-Kar rose from his seat, his yellow eyes blazing with fury and confusion. "This is impossible. Humans are Tier 3 species. Inferior. Weak. You cannot have this capability." "That," said Dr. Price calmly, "was your first mistake. The second. Part of humanity's demonstration began as transport ships appeared throughout Vorthan space. But instead of carrying invasion forces, they carried something that shocked the galaxy even more. Vorthan civilians who had been living in human space. These Vorthans had been quietly evacuated from human colonies before the operation began, not as hostages or prisoners, but as protected guests. They had been housed, fed, and cared for by the same humans their government had deemed inferior. "We return your people unharmed and well-treated," Admiral Morrison announced to the disabled Vorthan fleet. "They were removed from human space for their own safety, not because we wished them harm." But the most stunning revelation came when the transport ships delivered their most important passenger to the Galactic Council. Zeth-Kar himself, the Vorthan who had struck Tommy Bennett, appeared in the council chamber not as a prisoner of war, but as evidence. He was unharmed, well-fed, and clearly healthy. But his demeanor had changed completely from the arrogant warrior who had attacked a human child 6 months earlier. "Tell the council what you have learned during your time." "In human custody," Dr. Price requested. Zethkar struggled with words that did not come easily to his warrior mindset. I was captured by human agents 3 months ago. I expected torture, imprisonment, death. Instead, they showed me human colonies, human families, human children. The great warrior's voice cracked slightly as he continued. They made me understand what I had done. Not just to one small human, but to every parent who saw their own child in Tommy Bennett's suffering. "And what did you conclude from this experience?" Dr. Price asked gently. "That humans do not fight like warriors," Zethkar replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "They fight like parents, and there is nothing in the galaxy more dangerous than a parent protecting their children." The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Representatives from species across the galaxy processed what they had witnessed, a military operation that demonstrated overwhelming superiority while showing perfect restraint, conducted by a species that had been classified as inferior just. Hours earlier, Admiral Morrison's final message to the Vorthan leadership was broadcast across their space and to the Galactic Council simultaneously. "We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. We could have conquered your territory. We chose not to. We could have responded to cruelty with cruelty. We chose not to. But understand this clearly. Touch one of our children again, and you will discover that human patience has limits. We protect our own, all of our own, always." The demonstration was complete. Humanity had shown the galaxy that their strength lay not in their weapons or their technology, but in their unity, their planning, and their absolute commitment to protecting the innocent. Tommy Bennett, now fully recovered, played in the New Eden marketplace under his father's watchful eye. He did not fully understand that his injury had changed the galaxy, but he knew that the scary aliens would never hurt him or any other child again. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. You do not threaten human children unless you are prepared for the entire species to become your enemy. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so silent. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned contemplation of what they had witnessed. In less than 4 hours, humanity had demonstrated military capability that surpassed most, established galactic powers, then chosen restraint that defied every known model of interspecies conflict. Commander Jake Martinez stood at the podium where Dr. Price had presented humanity's case. But he was not alone. Beside him stood Tommy Bennett, now fully recovered and representing something far more powerful than any weapon humanity possessed: their future. "Honored representatives," Jake began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen combat but preferred peace. "I am not here as a military commander or a politician. I am here as a father, speaking for all human parents across known space." The boy next to him looked around the vast chamber with the curious eyes of an 8-year-old. Tommy still did not fully understand the galactic politics that had been shaped by his injury, but he understood that important people were listening to what his friend Jake had to say. 6 months ago, this child was struck down by an alien who believed humans were inferior, Jake continued. The attack was planned, calculated, and intended to break human spirit. Instead, it revealed something about humanity that we had never needed to show before. In the Vorthan section of the chamber, Zethkar sat with his delegation. The once proud warrior looked different now, marked by months of experiencing human justice and mercy. His people had expected their captured representative to return bearing stories of torture and brutality. Instead, he spoke only of humans, who had shown him kindness while teaching him the true cost of his actions. "We do not seek dominance over other species," Jake said, his hand resting protectively on Tommy's shoulder. We do not desire to conquer territories or impose our ways on others. We want only what every parent wants: safety for our children and the chance to build a better future for them. Senator Claire Watson watched from the diplomatic gallery as the council representatives processed Jake's words. For months, she had attempted to work within established galactic law to address Tommy's attack. Those efforts had failed because the law itself was designed to protect the strong at the expense of the weak. Today, humanity was rewriting those laws not through legislation or negotiation, but through demonstration of what true strength looked like. Admiral Ben Parker appeared on the holographic display, broadcasting from Earth's military headquarters. The operation you witnessed today required coordination between every human settlement in known space. Farmers, miners, scientists, teachers, and children all contributed to our success. This is what you call a Tier 3 species. The classification system that had defined galactic politics for centuries was crumbling before their eyes. Species advancement had always been measured by military power, territorial control, and economic dominance. Humanity had just demonstrated that these measures missed something fundamental about what made a civilization truly advanced. Dr. Nathan Cross joined the display from his research facility, presenting the cultural analysis that had shaped Operation Guardian Angel. We studied Vorthan society extensively before taking action. We learned their customs, understood their motivations, and identified their weaknesses. But we also learned something more important. Which was? Asked the Altarian representative, one of the few council members who had consistently supported human interests. We learned that every species in this galaxy has children. Every species loves their young and fears for their safety. The attack on Tommy Bennett was not just an attack on humanity. It was an attack on the fundamental bond that unites all intelligent life. This revelation sparked discussion throughout the council chamber. Representatives who had dismissed human concerns as weakness now realized they were seeing something they had forgotten in their own rise to power. The protective instinct that drove every parent to sacrifice for their children. Fleet Admiral Kate Morrison's voice cut through the discussions. Human forces are withdrawing from Vorthan space as we speak. Their military vessels are being repaired and returned to operational status. We came to make a point, not to occupy territory. The withdrawal was as precisely coordinated as the initial operation had been. Human ships departed Vorthan space exactly on schedule, leaving behind only one change: monitoring stations that would alert Earth immediately if any species attempted similar aggression against human civilians. Tommy Bennett stepped closer to the podium microphone, his small voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. My daddy says the scary alien learned that hurting kids is wrong. I hope he doesn't hurt any more kids, even alien kids. The simple words from an 8-year-old boy struck the council representatives harder than any military demonstration could have. Here was the victim of the attack that had started this crisis, showing more wisdom and compassion than most galactic leaders had demonstrated in decades of political maneuvering. Zethkar rose slowly from his seat, his massive form dwarfing the human child he had once struck. But his posture showed none of the arrogance he had displayed months earlier. I request permission to address the human representatives, the Vorthan said, his voice heavy with emotion that his species rarely displayed publicly. Jake nodded, though. He kept himself between Tommy and the alien who had hurt him. Young human, Zethkar addressed Tommy directly. I have learned much during my time among your people. I learned that strength is not measured by the ability to harm the weak, but by the choice to protect them instead. Tommy looked up at the towering alien without fear. Dr. Chang had helped him understand that not all aliens were like the one who had hurt him, and that sometimes even bad people could learn to be better. "Are you sorry?" Tommy asked in his direct, childlike way. "More sorry than my words can express," Zethkar replied. "I struck you because I thought it would prove Vorden's superiority. Instead, it proved something far more important about human character." The Vorthen delegation began the formal process of public apology and reparations, but the real change was happening throughout the galactic community. Representatives were reassessing not just humanity's capabilities, but their own understanding of what made a civilization worthy of respect. Dr. Helen Price presented humanity's proposal for new galactic law, the Universal Child Protection Protocols, which would make attacks on the young of any species a crime against all civilized peoples. The proposal was supported by overwhelming majority vote, with only 3 species abstaining. Captain Amy Rodriguez reported from New Eden Colony, which had become something of a pilgrimage site for humans across known space. The marketplace, where Tommy was attacked, has been turned into a memorial garden, not a monument to suffering, but a celebration of the recovery and growth that followed. Pete Bennett, Tommy's father, had become an unlikely symbol of quiet strength in the face of tragedy. His dignified response to his son's attack had inspired humans across the galaxy to respond with determination rather than hatred. "I never wanted my boy to be famous," Pete said during his brief address to the council. "I just wanted him to be safe. What we've accomplished here today means that human children everywhere can be safer. That's worth more than any revenge." As the council session concluded, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity's classification was officially revised from Tier 3, developing to Tier 1, protected. But the real change was in how other species viewed human character and capability. The Vorthan Consortium became unlikely allies, their warrior culture, finding new purpose in protecting rather than dominating the weak. Other species that had considered humans easy targets quietly revised their assessments and policies. Years later, Tommy Bennett would grow up to become a diplomat, working with former enemies to ensure no child of any species would face what he had endured. The Bennett Protocols became the foundation of interspecies law, protecting the innocent across the galaxy. Zethkar, transformed by his experience with human justice and mercy, became an advocate for peaceful conflict resolution. He often spoke to other species about what he had learned. Humans do not fight like warriors. They fight like parents. And there is nothing in the galaxy more dangerous than a parent protecting their child. The memorial garden on New Eden Colony grew over the years, tended by children of many species who played together in the same marketplace, where Tommy had once been struck down. The garden's central inscription, suggested by Tommy himself, read simply, "No child should ever be hurt for being different." The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their military might. It was their absolute, unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent, backed by the unity that came when an entire species recognized that every child was their child. Tommy Bennett, now grown and serving as an ambassador, would often tell young diplomats, "The strongest people are not those who can hurt others, but those who choose not to. That is what makes us human, and that is what makes us strong." 10 years had passed since the day that changed the galaxy forever. The New Eden Colony marketplace bustled with activity, but now it hosted traders and visitors from dozens of different species. Where once only humans and a few reluctant alien, Merchants had conducted business. Representatives from across known space now came to see the place where everything changed. Tommy Bennett, now 18 years old, walked through the memorial garden that had grown around the spot where he was. Struck as a child, he moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had grown up knowing he was both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. The scared 8-year-old was gone, replaced by a young man who carried the hopes of an entire galaxy on his shoulders. "Mr. Bennett?" called a voice behind him. Tommy turned to see a group of young aliens, barely more than children themselves, approaching with the nervousness that came from meeting someone famous. "Just call me Tommy," he said with a smile that had charmed diplomats and world leaders for years. "Are you here for the student exchange program?" The group consisted of young beings from 6 different species, all participants in the Interspecies Youth Understanding Initiative that had grown out of the Bennett Protocols. They nodded eagerly, their various forms of communication translating through universal devices that had become standard throughout civilized space. A young Vorthon female, her scales still showing the bright colors of youth, stepped forward hesitantly. "My grandfather was Zethkar. He told me stories about what happened here, about what he learned from humans." Tommy's expression softened. He had met Zethkar many times over the years as the former warrior had worked to make amends for his actions. The old Vorthon had become something of a mentor to Tommy, teaching him about alien cultures and the complex history that had led to that fateful day. "Your grandfather is a good man," Tommy replied. "He made a mistake, but he learned from it and spent the rest of his life trying to make things better. That takes real courage." Dr. Lisa Chang approached the group, her hair now showing streaks of gray, but her eyes still holding the same kindness that had saved Tommy's life years ago. She had become the director of the colony's medical center, which now served as a teaching hospital for alien and human doctors working together. "Tommy, your father is looking for you," she said. "The ceremony starts in an hour." Today marked the 10th anniversary of what historians called the Guardian Angel Incident. It had become a galactic holiday dedicated to the protection of children and the peaceful resolution of conflicts. Pete Bennett, now a respected leader in colonial affairs, would be giving the keynote address to representatives from over 100 worlds. As Tommy made his way toward the ceremony site, he passed the various monuments and displays that had grown up around the memorial garden. Each one told part of the story of how humanity had changed the galaxy, not through conquest or domination, but through demonstration of what civilized behavior actually looked like. The Bennett Institute for Interspecies Relations occupied the largest building in the colony, its classrooms filled with students from across known space learning diplomacy, conflict resolution, and cultural understanding. Tommy would begin his advanced studies there next year, preparing for a career in galactic diplomacy. Captain Amy Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez and head of the Earth Defense Force, stood near the main ceremony platform reviewing security arrangements. The presence of so many different species in one place required careful coordination, but it was the kind of challenge that had become routine since the galaxy learned to work together. "Any problems, Admiral?" asked Commander Jake Martinez, who had been promoted to head of colonial security across human space. "Nothing we can't handle," Rodriguez replied. "Though I have to admit, 10 years ago I never imagined we'd be hosting Vorthon military officials as honored guests at a peace celebration." Indeed, the changes in interspecies relations had been remarkable. The Vorthon Consortium had become one of humanity's strongest allies, their warrior culture finding new purpose in protecting the weak rather than dominating them. Other species that had once viewed humans as inferior now sought their guidance in resolving conflicts and building peaceful societies. Dr. Nathan Cross, now director of the Galactic Cultural Understanding Project, was reviewing his presentation on how the guardian angel incident had reshaped interspecies psychology. His research had shown that the demonstration of human restraint and capability had forced every major species to reevaluate their own concepts of strength and civilization. The most significant change, Cross would tell the assembled delegates, was not in how other species viewed humans, but in how they viewed themselves. When faced with an example of true strength through restraint, many civilizations began questioning their own reliance on force and dominance. Senator Claire Watson, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, had arrived the previous day with a delegation that included representatives from the new Interspecies Council for Child Protection. The organization had grown from a simple set of protocols into a galaxy-wide network dedicated to ensuring the safety and welfare of young beings everywhere. The Bennett Protocols have been adopted by every major civilization in known space, Watson reported during the pre-ceremony briefing. More importantly, we've seen a 60% reduction in conflicts involving civilian populations. When everyone agrees that children are off limits, it becomes much harder to justify aggression. Pete Bennett stood before the mirror in his modest home, adjusting the formal clothes that still felt uncomfortable after all these years. He remained the same quiet, decent man he had always been, but circumstances had made him a symbol of how ordinary people could respond to extraordinary challenges with dignity and grace. Tommy found his father in the small living room, where family photos shared space with awards and honors from grateful worlds. The young man had grown tall and strong, but Pete could still see traces of the 8-year-old boy who had chased his pet through the marketplace that day. "You ready for this, Dad?" Tommy asked. "I've been ready for 10 years," Pete replied. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what comes next." The ceremony itself drew beings from across known space, all gathered to commemorate not a victory in battle, but a victory of character over circumstance. Fleet Admiral Kate Morrison delivered the military perspective, explaining how Operation Guardian Angel had become a model for how advanced civilizations should handle conflicts with minimal casualties and maximum effectiveness. Chief Engineer Maria Santos, now head of the Interspecies Technology Cooperation Initiative, spoke about how sharing human innovations in coordination and communication had improved life for billions of beings across the galaxy. But the most powerful moment came when Zethkar himself, now ancient by Vorthon standards, slowly made his way to the podium. The once mighty warrior moved carefully, supported by a walking aid that had been crafted by human and Vorthon engineers working together. 10 years ago, I committed an act that I believed would demonstrate the superiority of my people. The old Vorthan began, his translated words carrying to every corner of the gathering. Instead, I learned that true superiority lies not in the ability to harm others, but in the choice to help them. He paused, his yellow eyes finding Tommy in the crowd. The human child I struck became my teacher, though he was too young to know it. His people showed me that strength without compassion is just another form of weakness. The ceremony concluded with the lighting of the memorial flame, a tradition that had spread to hundreds of worlds, where communities now held their own celebrations of peace and protection. Each flame was lit by a child, representing the future that all civilized beings were working to protect. As the crowd began to disperse, Tommy found himself standing with a group that included former enemies, current allies, and representatives. of species that had not even been discovered when his ordeal began. The young man who had started this transformation by accident now carried the responsibility of guiding its continued evolution. "What happens next?" asked a young diplomat from the newly contacted Meridian Republic. Tommy smiled, looking around at the peaceful gathering of beings who had once viewed each other with suspicion or contempt. "We keep learning from each other. We keep protecting those who need protection. And we keep proving that the galaxy can be better than it was." Dr. Chang approached the group carrying her medical bag as she had every day for the past 10 years. "Tommy, your checkup is next week. I want to make sure those old injuries aren't causing any problems." "Still treating me like I'm 8 years old," Tommy laughed. "To me, you'll always be the little boy I helped save," Chang replied. "But you've grown into something I never expected, proof that one person really can change the galaxy." As the sun set over New Eden Colony, the memorial garden glowed with lights that had been donated by grateful worlds. Each light represented a child who had been protected because of the laws and customs that had grown from Tommy's suffering. The galaxy had learned that the most brutal payback for cruelty was not revenge, but the demonstration that civilized beings could choose to be better. 10 years later, that choice continued to echo across the stars, carried by young diplomats like Tommy Bennett, who understood that true. 15 years after the Guardian Angel incident, the galaxy faced its greatest test since that day when everything changed. The crisis began in the Outer Rim territories, far from the established trade routes and diplomatic centers where the Bennett protocols had taken strongest root. Tommy Bennett, now 23 and serving as a junior ambassador in the Interspecies Council, received the emergency transmission while reviewing cultural exchange proposals at the Bennett Institute. The message was brief but chilling. A previously unknown species called the Keth Dominion had appeared at the edge of explored space, and their first act had been to attack a mixed colony of humans and Vorthons. "How bad is it?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim, Tommy's research partner and the daughter of Korean settlers who had joined New Eden Colony after hearing about its transformation into a symbol of peace. Tommy studied the reports streaming in from the emergency response teams. Bad. They didn't just attack military targets. They went after civilian areas first, including schools and medical centers. The attack on Haven Colony had shocked the galactic community. The settlement had been established as a model of interspecies cooperation, with human families living alongside reformed Vorthon warriors who had dedicated their lives to protecting others. It should have been the safest place in known space. Admiral Amy Rodriguez, now commanding the combined human-Vorthon defense fleet, appeared on the emergency communication channel. Her face showed the same grim determination that had marked humanity's response to the original attack on Tommy 15 years earlier. "Ambassador Bennett, we need you and your team here immediately," Rodriguez said. "The Keth are claiming they're liberating the galaxy from what they call human contamination of proper warrior values." Within hours, Tommy found himself aboard the flagship Harmony, accompanied by a diverse team of diplomats, cultural specialists, and military advisors. The ship itself represented how much had changed since his childhood, jointly constructed by human and alien engineers, crewed by beings from a dozen different species, all working together toward common goals. Captain Lisa Martinez, Jake's daughter, who had followed her father into military service, briefed the diplomatic team as they traveled toward the crisis zone. The Keth appeared to be a warrior society similar to what the Vorthons used to be, but more extreme. They view any form of cooperation or mercy as weakness that must be eliminated. Dr. Nathan Cross, now elderly but still sharp, joined the briefing via hologram from his research center. I've been analyzing their initial communications and behavior patterns. They seem to have heard about the Guardian Angel incident and interpreted it as proof that the galaxy has become soft and vulnerable. This was exactly what humanity and their allies had feared might happen. The success of peaceful cooperation had inspired most species to embrace diplomacy over conflict, but it had also created a potential vulnerability to those who still believed in conquest through force. Zethkar, now ancient but still serving as an advisor on warrior culture psychology, struggled to his feet when Tommy entered his quarters on the ship. The old Vorthan's scales had dulled with age, but his eyes still held the wisdom earned through years of difficult learning. "Young Tommy," Zethkar said in his gravelly voice, "I fear we face enemies who will not listen to reason as I did. The Keth believe that showing mercy is the same as showing weakness." "Then we'll have to prove them wrong," Tommy replied. "The same way we proved you wrong all those years ago. It may not be so simple this time. I had spent months among humans, learning your ways. The Keth have no such experience. They see only what they believe is a galaxy full of easy targets." The rescue operation at Haven Colony revealed the full scope of the challenge they faced. The Keth had not simply attacked and withdrawn. They had occupied the settlement and were holding the survivors as what they called examples of failed evolution. Commander Jake Martinez, now in his 60s but still leading colonial security operations, met the diplomatic team at the temporary command post established just outside Keth-controlled territory. "They've separated the prisoners by species," Jake reported. "Humans in one area, Vorthans in another, with the children kept apart from their parents. They claim they're conducting research on how cooperation has weakened both species. The situation was designed to provoke exactly the kind of emotional response that had driven humanity's earlier demonstration of power. But Tommy and his team had been trained in the lessons learned from that experience. Emotion without discipline led to tragedy. True strength required both compassion and careful planning. Dr. Helen Price, now director of the Diplomatic Crisis Response Center, established communication with the Keth leadership. The alien commander who appeared on screen was unlike anything the galactic community had encountered before. Tall, armored in what appeared to be living metal, with features that suggested both intelligence and complete ruthlessness. "I am war leader Thekmor of the Keth Dominion," the alien announced. "We have come to restore proper order to a galaxy that has forgotten the nature of strength." Tommy stepped forward to respond, drawing on years of training and the hard-won wisdom of those who had guided him. "I am Ambassador Tommy Bennett, representing the Interspecies Council. We're prepared to discuss your concerns about galactic policies." "There is nothing to discuss," Thekmor replied. "You are the child whose weakness 15 years ago began the corruption of warrior values across known space. Your very existence proves that this galaxy has lost its way." The statement hit Tommy like a physical blow. He had known this day might come, when someone would challenge not just the peace they had built, but the very principles it was founded on. The scared 8-year-old inside him wanted to run, but the diplomat he had become forced himself to remain calm. "What do you want?" Tommy asked simply. "Combat. Real combat, not the pathetic demonstration your people staged against the Vorthans. We will fight your strongest warriors in single combat. When we prove our superiority, this galaxy will remember what strength really means." It was exactly the kind of trap that the old human military doctrine would have fallen into. Accept the challenge, fight according to the enemy's rules, and prove superiority through violence. But Tommy had been raised by people who understood that the most important battles were not won with weapons. "We decline your challenge," Tommy said calmly, "but we offer an alternative." The Keth leader's expression showed surprise and contempt. "You refuse to fight? This proves our point about your weakness." "We're not refusing to fight," Tommy corrected. "We're choosing to fight smarter. You want to test strength? Let's test real strength." Over the next several hours, Tommy and his team proposed something that had never been attempted in galactic history: a structured competition between societies, not armies. The Keth could demonstrate their way of life, while the galactic community would demonstrate theirs. The survivors of Haven Colony would serve as judges, since they had experienced both approaches directly. The competition would test not just military might, but the ability to build societies that protected the weak, encouraged growth, and created lasting peace. It would measure not just how well each system could destroy, but how well it could create. Thekmor initially rejected the proposal as another sign of galactic weakness. But when Tommy pointed out that refusing would prove the Keth were afraid of a fair test of their beliefs, the war leader's pride overcame his caution. "Very well," Thekmor agreed. "But when we prove that strength through domination is superior to your cooperation through weakness, you will abandon these failed policies and accept Keth leadership. And if we prove that our way creates stronger, more prosperous, and happier societies?" Tommy asked. "Then we will consider your perspective," the war leader replied, though his tone suggested he considered such an outcome impossible. As preparations began for this unprecedented test of civilizations, Tommy found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him to this moment. From a scared child chasing his pet through a marketplace to an ambassador trying to prevent galactic war, every step had been shaped by the lessons learned that day when Zethkar's blow had changed everything. The galaxy was about to discover whether the peace they had built was strong enough to survive its greatest challenge yet. Tommy Bennett, the child whose suffering had started it all, would once again find himself at the center of events that would determine the future of interspecies relations. But this time, he would not face the challenge alone. Behind him stood the combined strength of dozens of species who had learned that true power came not from the ability to hurt others, but from the determination to help them grow stronger together.